Good afternoon. So today is daily attendance. I think it's like the second, maybe, I'm not sure, and I don't have anything to gauge. I'm cooking because it's already lunchtime, making some salmons. So daily attendance today for Tuesday, I think it's June 2nd. Upload here. Yesterday, some of you all did not put what you're grateful for, so make sure that you do so. There's a lot of unrest in the United States because of the Lloyd, the excess force from the police. But we need to remind ourselves that we have to be mindful, and everything, all the great leaders, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Buddha, Jesus, all those great leaders that have survived the test of time in their teachings, always taught nonviolence movement. And so violence begets violence. And so we have to be mindful that being mindful and not being violent does not mean that you're accepting and does not mean that you're okay. It's about truly finding a way to change whatever is improper, right? And whatever we feel that are injustices, but through nonviolence. And so what is it within ourselves and within our environment and what it is that we're living in that we ourselves can change, that truly can state and initiate true change, right? And that's what I've discussed this before, right? We are who we are always, right? And as I mentioned before with that bully in the camera, did anybody step up and tell him, hey, back down, or stand at least next to the guy in the Costco that was telling him, the employee that was telling him that he wasn't gonna, sell him the stuff? Did anybody go by? You don't even have to say anything. Sometimes a stance and sometimes being present and showing your physical presence, right? Like the protesters. If you're protesting, non-violently, well, that's one thing. But if you're looting and stuff like that, well, that's not necessarily a protest, right? And then what happens with all those companies and all those businesses that are having results out of something that has nothing? It's just a vicious cycle, and it doesn't solve anything. So going back to the Costco employee, right? Did anybody stand by him? Just stand by him. They don't need to do anything. You don't need to say anything. Or, did anybody come in and help him out and tell that guy, hey, you know what, we'll just, leave or whatever, right? So those are the times that define us. And defining us does not mean, right, and defending does not mean that we go beat up the bully, or we go and do loot, places, or that we belittle, right? There was a police officer, I saw a scene, and I'm not really reading into it. I'm not reading because, as you all know, I'm very much affected by that. But there was a scene where a police officer took a knee, right? And other people took a knee. So what an incredible show of solidarity. And we have to understand also that in everything and in anything there is good and bad, and not all police officers are bad. There is a lot of maybe excessive force, right? But that doesn't mean that they're all bad. And so that's the same deal with the businesses. Why are people looting, and why are they destroying? They're destroying things, and they're going in. You don't get resolutions, and you don't get things that that are by looting. And by, doing all this violence does not help anything and does not change anything. All it does is create turmoil, and it takes away from the actual incident and injustice that existed, right? So we have to be careful, and we have to make sure that if we feel that we need to protest, then how is it that we can protest? And if we cannot protest, but we want to make something, what is it in your life that you need to take a stand for? And what is it in your life that you wish to stand up for? And how is it that you're going to do that in terms of supporting whatever it is that you wish to convey? And so, so as I tell you, with the employee, nobody stood next to him. And I will tell you, when I was a principal in high school, I was a change agent, and I don't want to get into that. You guys need to check that out in terms of what that that word is, but I used to go to schools and very low performing schools and then really turn them around. I got so good that I could turn around a very low performing school in a year. I could make them high proficiency to about a 75% or 80% proficiency. And if you think that's low, most high schools are low, but people don't understand that, and they don't understand the numbers, and nobody cares, and everybody thinks that their high school is great, and they really aren't. In terms of performance, they actually do very poorly. But anyway, so of course I wasn't liked, and I was very much persecuted, okay, by the employees and by which are the teachers, and by parents. As I told you before, who maybe children were in trouble and I had to suspend or whatever because I had to secure the school, right, and make sure that it was safe. But in one of the board meetings, because I was very much persecuted and it was horrendous, and one of the board meetings, in one of the board meetings, my whole football team and the coaches to the football team appeared. Okay, so while I was being persecuted, and while I was being belittled, and while I was being accused by teachers, by non-performing teachers, and teachers that felt that the changes that I was making were not appropriate because it affected, right, them being able to do all the other stuff that they shouldn't have done. My team came, and just by their sheer presence in that meeting, okay, and while I was sitting there taking it all because I was there for the better good of the whole school. I wasn't there for those people, but those people were the loudest, right? The people that complained, and the people that wouldn't follow rules, and the people that were non-compliant, and the people that were non-performance were the most vocal, okay? And so while I sat there in the board meeting, which was very hard to take, all of a sudden my football team showed up, okay? And my coach, who is a Pittsburgh Steeler, what is it called? Super Bowl champion, and he has 2 Super Bowl rings, and I had him as my football coach, okay? So he, in the 70s, was the kicker for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think, and so he had 2 beautiful Super Bowl rings because he had won the Super Bowl with them. So it was incredible. So he, Mr. Jarella was his name, and I will be completely indebted with him, and Mr. Vasquez as well, who were my main football coaches. They showed up to the meeting, and all they did was stand in the back of the meeting against the wall. That's it. And all the football team came down. You know what message that said and what that conveyed? That they supported me, and that no matter what happened, they were there. And the force and the strength, right, and the support that I felt has been like nothing that I have ever felt in my life. They didn't say anything. They didn't come up and speak. All they did was just presence, and they were there present, right? And can you imagine, they're football, right? So they're huge. They're huge. All the kids were huge, and the coaches were huge, and everything. And so it was such a powerful message without having to say one single word. They stood there. That's all it took, and they showed up. So are you willing to show up, and are you willing to stand there to fight and to send the message for whatever injustices you feel you need, that you feel that you need to be vocal on? See you tomorrow in our meeting. Ciao.